And we're live.
Hi,
Hello.
Alexis.
Hello, Dr. Rachel. How are you going?
I'm good.
What happened there?
I just was remembering a new client who I said I promised to take her, and she waited 6 months to see me. And she, at the start of our Zoom sessions, she says, "Hello, Dr. Rachel," just like you saying. So I said she could only call me.
It's pretty catchy. Yeah, I think you should run with it. I think we should start you a column.
And she was like,
Dr. Rachel.
and she was like, do I need to call you that? And I'm like, no, you absolutely don't. It's just a thing. Anyway.
Catchy. I like it. Sometimes, catchy is helpful. So today we're talking about distress tolerance, which is a skill that anyone can learn and everyone can benefit from. Whether you're experiencing stress, anxiety, or overwhelm, or whether you're experiencing flatness, sadness, depression, or loneliness. In fact, distress tolerance can be applied to absolutely any experience.
Well,
so we'll
any experience that's distressing.
There you go. So that's exactly right. Yeah, and I would love us to have a look at some of those different applications, because there may be people who also need to be applying it to physical distress. So we can talk a lot about the various ways people can apply it in their lives. But firstly, what's your experience with distress tolerance, Rachel? And could you tell us a little bit about the origins?
Absolutely. So distress tolerance is a term coined by Marsha Linehan, who is a psychologist. She's very old now, from the USA, and she developed a therapy called dialectical behavior therapy, DBT, which is a modern form of cognitive behavior therapy because it works with trying to become aware of the mind and of conscious thoughts that are going through our mind, our emotions, and our behaviors. Unlike traditional CBT, it definitely has a lot of focus on, as the words distress tolerance imply, a lot of focus on emotion, which is different from traditional cognitive behavior therapy, which was very much focused on cognitions. And DBT is indicated in psychology for any client who is so distressed that they're engaging in self-destructive behaviors or attempted to engage in self-destructive behaviors. Now, that could be anything from smoking, drinking, taking drugs, overeating, raging, doing damage to their relationships or their mental or physical health in some way. And so this therapy is often used for people who have more suffering, whether it's personality disorder like BPD, schizophrenia, post-traumatic stress disorder, and other disorders where the person is just even unable to cope with the level of emotional distress they're experiencing. And distress tolerance is the first of 4 key skills we teach in DBT. I'll mention the other 3, but we've got to start with distress tolerance, because while we're in distress, of course, we can't practice the second one, which is mindfulness. We can't practice the third one, which is emotional regulation and emotional intelligence, which is the stuff you and I talk about a lot, like the nonviolent communication stuff is about naming feelings, understanding what they're pointing to. And then the 4th skill in DBT is interpersonal effectiveness. So where we, understand our beliefs, our needs, our feelings, and we find ways to put that into words and to improve relationships, because relationships are such a big part of mental health. And if you're in deep distress on a regular basis, one of the sabotaging behaviors that you might engage in is damaging your relationships. But it all starts with distress tolerance. I know that was a big summary, but I hope that made sense.
It's great. And you've reminded me also on your mention of PTSD that, again, for those of you who are overseas, you may remember that last week, and it really wasn't that long ago, we were experiencing some severe flooding in Brisbane, and there is certainly post-traumatic stress living in people's bodies. And so we're keen to keep that conversation going because it's a critical time to start applying these skills. And distress tolerance is one of those that we can, we can learn to regulate our physiology through regulating our emotions and befriending rather than resisting.
Yeah.
So if any of you out there have been affected by the flood, even vicariously, then please, you're about to say? Oh, I think my internet is a little bit unstable.
Yeah, you are breaking up. You're breaking up. I hope it gets a little bit better. But yes, I was thinking of that too, because I know that Alexis, more so than I have been, you've been involved with people in your community who've been affected by the floods, and you were the one who suggested we do this topic. Because you've come across it in your attempts to support some traumatized folk in your community. Is that right?
That's absolutely right. And it's not something that's really going to be gone like that. You know, people have lost a lot, their livelihoods, some of them. So these skills, the more that we get them out into the community, and especially these simple ones that anybody can apply, the more we can support the inner resilience. Yeah.
Exactly. So a couple of things. So earlier today, about midday, there was a post on our page which had a really great resource which everybody can access for free on the dialecticalbehaviortherapy.com website, and I linked to the distress tolerance section of the website, and you'll see there's things like cost benefit analysis, recognizing emotional crisis, and a lot of people have been in emotional crisis, distraction, resist techniques, grounding, radical acceptance, self-soothing, and so on. And so I really encourage people to have a look at that resource that I posted on our Facebook page. I can post it again later in the comments. But I wanted to start off by saying that I believe the first step to distress tolerance is to change our attitude around distress and around stress. As the name implies, we can tolerate distress, not love it. Like no one's going to try to convince you that it's pleasant or, really good for you. We're not going to do that toxic positivity stuff. All we're saying in DBT is, guess what? You think you can't tolerate distress, but you're a human being. You're hardwired for struggle and challenge. You can tolerate this thing. So we've got to change the relationship to our own physiology, even when it feels like it's hijacking us, even when it's really, really intense. And I do understand personally how intense distress, anxiety, despair, I understand how full on this feeling can be in your system. But as soon as you take the attitude of, I can't handle this, everything gets worse. So we do need to start with an attitude of, well, maybe I can handle this, even though it's really kind of horrible, because, we have a high tolerance, human beings, for chaos. We're pretty resilient, actually, but we forget. What do you think?
Yes, absolutely. I think it can build our confidence and our sense of self-worth when, for example, I know I have frustration coming up. I've had frustration coming up around my technical issues due to the floods this week. And I notice my tendency to avoid. I'm wanting to get up and make myself a cup of tea every 10 minutes at the moment. But I do find that I build some confidence when I just don't react to that immediate escape. Yeah. And I just hold myself personally, I've been using a bit of self-talk, a bit of my inner parent saying, "Okay, Lexi, let's just stay put and see what happens. See if it gets a little bit easier if we just stay focused and continue." I think it can build our confidence.
And what you're pointing to there is in DBT, they talk about, and in distress tolerance, resisting the impulse to act out your distress, right? So it's very, and some people are naturally more impulsive than other people. It's a genetic risk factor, impulsivity. And so, you know, I really feel for people who have more difficulty curbing impulses. I'm not exactly high on prudence myself, but I don't struggle as much as many of my clients and people I've known. I'm somewhere in the middle, but it's good to recognize impulsivity exists on a continuum. So some people have a low threshold for frustration or disappointment or stress. And so it's very easy for them to act out. So one of the things we teach in distress tolerance is the resist techniques. And I think resist stands for something. The letters stand for something. Let me just look it up. It's on the link that I shared. But it's a way to deal with overwhelming emotions to help you cope with the unproductive urges, because smoking an entire packet of cigarettes or kicking your dog or getting into a fight with someone on the internet, you know, none of these things are going to probably make the quality of your life any better. Forgive yourself if you do them, but then you want to learn techniques to resist these urges. So we've got things like reframing the situation, which is what you just described, Alexis. You know, you talk to yourself and you say, actually, my life isn't so bad right now. I can do something about this. We get out of the black and white thinking, which is so easy to fall into when we're distressed. We all do it. Have you ever gone into black and white thinking when you've been distressed?
Definitely, yes. The tendency to be either I'm terrible, I can't do my job, or I'm amazing and I'm completely nailing it.
Yeah, or it can take the form of, why bother? Who cares? Nothing's important. Like nothing matters. Why bother? I've heard a lot of clients fall into that pit of despair, or, you know, like judging someone really harshly and just seeing their bad qualities, you know, like this is black and white thinking. So we want to reframe. That's one technique. Try and think about it in a more gray sort of a way. Now we've got distracting activities. So try and either do something that needs doing or do something pleasurable, because if you actually pick yourself up by the bootstraps and go and do something, like anything, have a shower, call a friend, listen to some music, go for a walk, you will probably feel a little bit better afterwards. That's the chances. So we try and I watch comedy sometimes when I'm feeling really down. I've got a few comics on YouTube that I really like. What do you do to distract yourself sometimes, Alexis?
Oh, you're making me laugh because you've tipped me off on some very funny comedy. Okay. But my go-to is a walk around the block or a hug with my daughter. That really does change. It changes my mood. I have a playlist that I go to. I can't fault Sia. She lifts my mood no matter what. But you know, I'm reflecting also that distress tolerance is relevant also to our heavier emotions. I mean, we're talking about some pretty light stuff here. You know, frustration is a fairly simple thing, although having said that, it can happen on a daily basis.
It can get intense. Yeah.
It can, yes. And but I recently, just this week, was practicing distress tolerance, and we call it here compassionate embracing.
That's like next level distress tolerance. Distress tolerance, compassionate embracing.
Yeah, yes, it is.
And when you graduate from distress tolerance.
Well, thank you. We like to think that we're graduated in here. Yeah, we were practicing it with loneliness, which was a really big one. I was surprised once we dropped to it exactly how far I experienced it within my body. It was almost, I could not find the end in front of me or behind me. I just, at the sensory level, the experience of loneliness was really vast. And so my point here is that distress tolerance can apply to even our heaviest, most heartfelt, deep experiences.
Anything that we find distressing, as the name implies. And the thing is, loneliness can be distressing and produce anxiety. You know, if we can't sit in our loneliness, which is quite challenging, as you've just said, then not being able to sit in a heavy emotion can produce anxiety over the top of that emotion. So emotions get layered.
That's a very good point.
Yeah,
Yes.
we're afraid of pain. All mammals are afraid of pain, or maybe all life forms are afraid of pain, but humans are certainly very afraid of pain, understandably. And loneliness is painful, and sadness can be painful. Even disappointment can be so painful, and sitting in it is so hard that then we just get anxious because we're scared of the feeling and what it means. And, you know, the mind projects forward and backward. And so, you know, this is where the next skill of DBT comes in, which is mindfulness. But the thing that we know now is we can't practice mindfulness when we're severely dysregulated, severely distressed. So let me just go through a couple more of these resist techniques, which is about resisting the impulse to act out the distress and just staying with it so you can settle down like you just described, Alexis. So grounding, which is what you've just described, actually coming into the present moment, noticing your thoughts, and noticing your body. So this is a whole, you know, technique within distress tolerance. And we've got a few others that are very similar and related, like self-soothing, progressive muscle relaxation, you know, using the senses to get grounded. And another one is called radical acceptance. And I loved this term when I first heard it, radical acceptance. The idea that and I've actually got a few radical acceptance, like sometimes a good thought, holding on to a good thought is very, very helpful, I find. And so I've got
an example of holding on to a good thought. Have you got an example for it?
Yeah, I've got a few actually from my dialectical behavior therapy skills workbook. So some coping statements, because our thoughts will either be productive or unproductive, won't they? They'll either be helpful or unhelpful. They're not good or bad or right or wrong. It's just, are my thoughts supporting me or not? So radical acceptance, coping statements are things like, the present moment is the only one I have control over. Or this moment is exactly as it should be, given what's happened before it. Or all of the series of choices I have made in the past have led up to this moment. None of which is meant to be a criticism of yourself, just a radical acceptance that we have made choices along the way that have brought us to this point, so we don't blame ourselves or anyone else, because that's not productive. This moment is the result of over 1 million other decisions. So acknowledging that interdependence of this moment on all the other moments and all the other factors, so that we can give up the fight. So much energy is wasted in fighting the reality and fighting the past and fighting the present. And so it's sort of this thing of, it is the way it is. So simple.
Yeah, I love that. Give up the fight. I really love that. That seems to be a real turning point for most people when we realize that rather than trying to stop the pain, and this does come very much from mindfulness and contemplative practice, that we're not trying to stop. There's a myth that meditation, for example, is trying to stop our thinking. When once we give up the fight and embrace, then life becomes easier. I'm not trying to resist my inner experiences, my thoughts and my feelings and my bodily sensation, but I can be with it. And this is where I'd really love to get practical for at least 5 minutes of our session.
Also, there's questions.
Good.
Yeah,
good. So I'm aware that people will be experiencing crisis at the moment, and I would love to give some practical skills, because there's a lot of talk about being with it and sitting with it. So perhaps at the end we could save 5 minutes. We'd love you to stay with us. It would be really helpful to have the theory and the understanding of why we do it. But I'd love you to walk away knowing that this is something that lives in your body, that you can apply even when you're talking to somebody else. Ideally, you can apply it in a concentrated space that allows you to really fully understand the experience in your body. But it's something that's entirely within reach. It's not this ethereal theory. It has good, solid evidence. CBT especially has a huge amount of evidence behind it. So yeah, I will make sure that we save 5 minutes at the end to get practical.
Practical. Okay, good. And I've got a practical question here from Joe, who says, what do you do when your emotions completely take you over and you jump into an immediate reactive behavior and you can't even realize it? You know, it could be like a blind rage or something else, but you don't even realize you're doing it. It's such a great question, Joe. Because in that moment, yes, as you've said, you can feel like you have no control at all. What would you suggest to people with that, Alexis?
Yeah, thanks, Rachel. And thank you for raising that, Joe, because this is something we see a lot with PTSD. I know for myself, my experience of trauma was that it was completely out of my control. No doubt many of you have heard of the amygdala, the part of the brain that is primed to react quickly and does so before the cortex has a chance to really be considered and think with an executive type function. So, wow, look, I think really the practice of distress tolerance does act as a prevention so that we can start to see it creeping in. And even if the first time we don't catch it early, we can look back and see, okay, I reacted again. Mm-hmm. But even that is helping to build executive function. And maybe the next time it's just a little bit dampened because I'm familiar with the sensations. I've kind of started to maybe recognize some of my triggers. So the understanding of it, the unpacking of my own inner experience allows me to learn from it. Yes. That's been my experience. I have to learn from my practical experience for it to change.
And what you're describing is playing the long game with our mental and emotional well-being. It's a long game. There's nothing I could ever offer anyone listening or my clients where it's just like that and everything, like there's no magic wand. This is like the long game. And this sort of, you've just answered, Alexis, a question from Mia, who says, but what if you don't even realize you're in distress? So what I would say, it's such a great question because I do workplace psychology, and sometimes I ask groups of executives who don't always realize they're stressed. Like this is all of us, you know, I don't realize I'm stressed until I yell at the dog. Mm-hmm. You know, that's so just like Mia has said, many of us might be so in a trance with whatever we're doing or with our emotions that we don't realize it. But as you said, Alexis, sometimes the best we can do, we're all human, none of us is perfect, is we've yelled at the dog. And then we go, oh my gosh, I yelled at the dog, or I, you know, drank too much, or I yelled at whatever the behavior is that's a really kind of something you're not proud of. Again, you want to go backwards and look at the order of things. You know, I must have been distressed. What am I feeling? And what was I feeling in my body? What triggered me? You want to kind of unpack the triggers, the physical sensations, name the emotions, see if you can identify what you were telling yourself, as you say, to kind of learn about yourself so that next time you might catch yourself before you yell at the dog or your child or whatever.
Yes, yeah, that's a really great example, the dog example, and really interesting point, Mia. I'd be interested if any insights have come to you based on this conversation, and whether, personally, I find it really helps to just focus on one distress at a time, like I was saying, frustration or loneliness, even anger. I mean, there's, as we've been learning, there's value in our emotions. So the only way we can really identify the need underlying the emotion is to be with it. And I agree with you, Rachel, this is the long game. And yet I've also experienced really profound change through distress tolerance. Even a single sitting of being with my anger it changes my experience. And as you said, rather than overlaying it with fear of my anger or anxious about being angry, it lightens the load significantly.
Yeah.
What's your experience?
Yeah, no, I definitely, we all layer we have feelings about our feelings, the meta emotions, and we can feel frustrated that we feel anxious, or we can feel anxious that we feel angry, or, you know, like, so if we can sort of go down through the layers through some sort of technique that settles us, grounds us. Sometimes I even just say to myself the word settle. I like the word settle because I can imagine glitter or mud or something just slowly settling to the bottom. I can sort of get a visual with the word settle more so than with the word relax. Hey, I just wanted to flag one other question that I think is really important, is from Louisa. She says, how could you practice or learn DBT outside of group therapy? I've only ever seen it offered as a group therapy. I'm so glad you said that, Louisa, because DBT is typically offered as a group in a group therapy. I think that's just the history of DBT. Marsha Linehan worked in a hospital, and it's set up for groups primarily, although many practitioners like me use it with individuals. I could highly recommend, if you want to work through DBT in a systematic way outside of a group setting, this book by Marsha Linehan, the DBT Skills Training Handouts and Worksheets, is highly practical. Like, look at this. It's just so full of really practical stuff. Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay. That answers everybody's questions as far as I can tell.
Yes. Yeah. So perhaps we could pick a distressing emotion that has been present for us this week, and you might just reflect, and it could be anything. It could be sadness. It could be grief. You know, there's a lot of loss in our community. It could simply be it could be loss, the experience of loss. It could be anxiety. It could be stress, even quite a loose term, but you might have a resonance with the word. It could even be overwhelm. Whatever your most recent experience of distress has been, I invite you to bring that to mind. Are you ready, Rachel, to do just a very, very brief practice?
Let's go for it. Yes.
Awesome. So I like to do it with my eyes closed. I find it helps me to connect more with my kinesthetic experience, which is considered valuable as well as your visual, but it's really the kinesthetic that we're looking for, the bodily experience. So you can find your breath. That will help you to identify your center, the place from which we can observe without needing to engage too much in the content or the storyline. And the breath will also help you to connect with your body so that you can bring to mind the experience of this distressing emotion. And you may even like to use the word, just to yourself, say the word, whether it's loneliness, frustration, anxiety, sadness. And identify where it exists in your body. What is your experience? Many times the experience is through the central region, but it could also be at the periphery, your shoulders, your arms. Sometimes it's down through your pelvis, even in the legs. Specific sensations will be experienced even in the feet. Sometimes it's more apparent on your jaw, your face, even your scalp. But identify one region that the emotion is apparent. And then we simply watch and observe it. I like to see if I can find the boundary of the feeling. I seek for the front side and the back side, the top, and then the bottom. To the left side and of course the right. And you may even have a sense of the shape, whether it's a cube, whether it's an oval, or whether it's some alternate shape altogether. Sometimes there's a colour associated or a texture. Any other associations come to mind, you can let that happen. Whether it's memories or visuals. If you ever need to centre and reground, your breath is always accessible. It's always available. Constant companion. And then finally, I like to seek the very heart of the emotion. Just locate within that spatial awareness, locate the heart. And if you had a paste, a pencil, and you could just touch the very, very source, where would you place that tip? You can do that now. So that from now on, you'll have a familiar relationship with this emotion. You may notice that next time it comes up, yes, I know you, frustration. Yes, I recognize you, loneliness. And you have a friendship. No resistance. There's an easier relationship. And each time that you come to visit, you can improve that familiarity so that the emotion no longer has a power over you. You're in relation to it. And so we can come on back to each other. Is there anything that you would like to add, Rachel, or anything that you find specifically valuable to share with your clients?
Yeah, I think when you said just now, where is it located? This is also a question I ask my clients, because they can maybe say, I'm very anxious or I'm very angry, but locating it in the body, seeing if it's associated with a color or a shape or maybe an image. Sometimes it takes a form and appearance, but I really like that. What was new to me just now was, imagine you had a pacer pencil. I still love pacer pencils so much. And put the pacer pencil right in the middle of it. Where would that be? That's new to me, and I really liked that because I was able to do that just now. Yeah, and I agree. It changes the nature of the relationship with your emotional feeling from one that's antagonistic and resisting to one that's more tolerant, more patient, and much more gentle. And I think there's no alternative really, because if we stay in that antagonistic, resistant relationship with our feelings, we just add layers of more distress. Which is exactly what we don't want to do.
And it may be worth mentioning that even if you don't have a very clear sense of where it lives in your body, but to imagine it will already give it some tangible form. So it doesn't have to be accurate. There is no, this is, whatever, just to locate or visualize and have some bodily experience will be valuable.
Oh, absolutely. We all start somewhere and then we practice, and practice makes progress.
Indeed. And this is the very same practice that I use in clinic to build tolerance to the intolerable. I mean, it's this simple practice that we can apply to even really difficult and hidden aspects of self. I really hope that it does prove valuable for you guys out there, and we would always love to hear from you.
Yes, I will have a look later at the comments and any questions that haven't been responded to. I'll see if I can, and perhaps we could also post in the comments a link to the because in a couple of weekends' time, the last Sunday of the month, 27th of March in this case, will be our monthly yoga and psychology practice group. New people are very welcome.
Yeah.
And so whether you've come before or you've never come before, you don't need a particular level of skill or background knowledge per se, although it helps if you've looked a little bit into nonviolent communication. I'll post a link in the comments with some more information, I think. How does that sound?
Yeah, please. Thank you. That would be fantastic. I have a dinner guest this evening, so I won't be manning. If you wouldn't mind, that would be great. But yes, we're really looking forward to seeing you in the flesh, because we had to cancel our last community meeting due to the flood. So we can't wait to see you in person. And yes, being early in the year, it's a good time for newcomers. And the skills, just like what you've learned today, the distress tolerance, the skills of NVC can be used to support any community members that may have been affected by the floods, any neighbours or people in your street who you might just want to be keeping an eye on right now. So please do come and skill up. That's what we're here for.
Yeah, to build community that provides also a safe, psychologically safe space.
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you so much, Alexis.
Thank you, Rachel. Yeah, I will see you same time, same place.
Yeah, enjoy your dinner guests.
Thank you. And you enjoy your evening. Thanks for joining us, everybody, and see you next time.
Everyone. Bye.
Bye.